Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here. It is Tuesday, December 5th, and today I'm going to ask you to do something that may sound strange, but hear me out. There's an objective to this, and if I'm right, you can thank me later. As a side note, I had an occasion years ago to go and work for I did some work for this bank organization. And within the bank, there were lots of people who had worked at the bank forever. And among those people, I started talking to them about finance and investing, the world of investments and all that stuff. And I found a ton of these people who had invested just through stock option programs and all that stuff. They had massive amounts of their money tied up in the stock of that bank. And I convinced as many as I could to divest, to go into a more diverse portfolio. And some did. To this day, I still occasionally talk to some of those people, and they're like, they're like, we thank you so much. And so the feedback is awesome. It's wonderful and encouraging to get that sort of feedback. But in a similar vein, imagine a scenario where we have this conversation today, and I get you maybe, hopefully, thinking a little bit differently about the world that we're in. And maybe someday you can send me a message or an email or something and mix it in with all the hate that I get online. And you can say thank you later. I think that may happen. And I welcome the opportunity in the future to hear from you with success stories. And here's what it looks like. We know there's a ton of stuff going on in the world that's very scary, and it's all gone woke-a-doodle far left, and it's just mayhem and war and fighting. And I don't need to preach to the choir. If you're listening to this show and following me, besides the people, somebody sent me a huge series of hate messages a few days ago. I can't read them on the air, but they were atrocious. So apparently, some people are agitated by me and my voice, and just sort of trying to encourage people not to be woke-a-doodle and harm the world. But so anyway, if you're not one of those, then please, first of all, please do hit the like button, whatever channel this is on, and this broadcasts so many different platforms. Wherever you're finding this, please do hit the like button. It defeats the algorithms that try and suppress people like me and gets this visible to more people. But here's the deal. Most people are aware that the world has just gone kind of crazy. And I think so a lot of people, the instinct is to kind of hunker down and withdraw within. And I really truly believe that that's part of the objective. We talk a lot about how there's psychological operations at play here, and the people who are doing this, they have a lot of experience in intimidating, terrorizing, manipulating, and destroying societies. And so I really believe that what we're looking at within the United States is an attempt at regime change, an attempt at changing the very fabric of the United States from a constitutional republic to, well, they just keep saying democracy over and over again. The left, it's just all day. It's like a drumbeat. Democracy, democracy, democracy. We're not a democracy. So cut it out. They know what they're doing. So anyway, there's like all this doom and gloom stuff everywhere. And oh, don't get me started on the whole stay safe thing. As if, it's ridiculous. But so here's the deal. Years ago, a guy by the name of Warren Buffett, who is known for investing in things, and he's got pretty good return for his investments and everything. And he's every once in a while he comes out with these comments and expressions that people like and they resonate and they get popular. Here's one of them. Investors need to be fearful when others are greedy, and to be greedy when others are fearful. That's attributed to Warren Buffett. I believe it to be true. I believe that's a comment that he made. But so let me read that again, and then we're going to dive into that and think a little bit about applying that in today's environment. investors need to be fearful, or it's actually should be. Investors should be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. What that's saying is that you kind of do the opposite of what mass society, the hive mind mentality sort, are doing. Because a lot of times people get caught up in these fashion trend things, and they do very damaging things. So people, like for instance, and this is true, proven over and over again throughout society and the history of the markets and everything, overwhelmingly, when you look at really high market peaks, when the market's way up, everyone gets all excited and jumps into the market. And then when the market goes down, a lot of those people jump out of the market. And what I think effectively, among other things, what Mr. Buffett is saying there is do the opposite. When the market's down and everyone feels gloomy about it, you put money into the market because that's when appreciation is more likely. And when the markets are way up and hitting new highs and all that stuff, what he's saying is maybe that's the time to be a little bit fearful because people have run up and created bubbles. That's my interpretation of his comment. But what if we apply that to patriotism and the United States? I've talked a little bit about how some of these wokedoodle managers, these far left wackos who were they've fallen in love with Chinese Communist Party and communist ideals and all that nonsense, which it still has a track record of 0% success. And what it does is leads to mass genocide and starvation and all that stuff. But let's say that those people are wrong. Those people who are flying over to China and saying that they won't invest in the United States and that they're going to manage their umpteen $1 trillion of our money ex-US, which means they're going to invest in anything except the United States, and ex-Europe, which means they're going to avoid Europe and all that stuff. So there's an impression right now as the rioting and mayhem hits the West, like, oh, gosh, we wouldn't possibly want to invest in that. We should probably dump all of our money into far left companies and causes, or let the managers do that. Well, I think that's a curated concept. And what if the things that I keep talking about prove to be true? And what if we apply that thought process of being greedy when other people are fearful, and fearful when other people are greedy? If the greed is leading these managers into ESG, far left, woke, CBDC, corporate equity index, and all the stuff that's trying to create this global Green New Deal environment. And they're all caught up in this easy money of government funding. An example is the trying to create battery powered everything. And there are all these companies that are behind the scenes that are drilling for rare earth or mining for rare earth minerals, and they're using child slave labor and all that horrible nonsense. And those companies, for the time being, for a brief moment now, because they're taking tax dollars and they're creating government subsidies, the return on those, I guess, is probably pretty good, and especially for the people that actually bought them a long time ago. I'm looking at you, congressmen and senators and our representative, our crooked government. They probably bought this stuff 10 years ago at just super cheap per share, and then they're just sucking up all this government money. But that's not real free markets. That's not a real marketplace, and it has no real sustainability, to use a term from the leftists. But so as these things evolve and unfold, and then we have more things like Solyndra, which is a California-based company years ago that was supposed to be the next new big green energy thing, and all these $5 billion in U.S. taxpayer funds went into it, and then everyone was like, "Well, gosh, oops, we went bankrupt, and we don't know where the money is." I think that a lot of that is more likely to happen along the way. So people are caught up in this idea globally of like green energy, climate activist stuff, and we're going to pump all our money in, and that's the market. And then the managers, these portfolio managers and mutual funds and exchange traded funds and all that stuff, they bought into that hook, line, and sinker. A lot of them did. And then those are, when you look at your 401k, that's the lion's share of those. I keep seeing it. It's all far left woke. It's overwhelming. It's massive. I did a big expose on a company called Procter and Gamble recently, and their portfolio, as far as I'm able to tell, the most current releases, it's all far left woke garbage and nonsense. But here's the thing: if we, the people who actually care about Western society and free markets and individual personal freedoms and liberties and all the things that encompass, well, certainly the conservative side and right side, but also a lot of the middle. There are plenty of people that I call sort of traditional liberal Democrats, the traditional ones, and libertarian and whatever. So it's not just the conservative right, but there are people everywhere that would love to feel that feeling again of a rebirth and the revitalization of Western principles and values. Call them whatever you want. There are lots of monikers that are attached, like Judeo-Christian Foundation and all that stuff. And it's the opposite of this crazy harebrained idea that going even further left is somehow going to resolve into anything beneficial for people. All that does is it makes 99% of the world live like paupers and peasants, and with no freedom and individual liberty, and they're just like disposable beings. Well, a select, scant, very few control massive amounts of money. Those people love that, and they're pitching it. That's what they're selling via K through 12 education and colleges all over the place. They're selling the idea that there's going to be some sort of social justice at the end of the rainbow, and that social justice is going to be great and awesome for everybody, and we'll all live in peace and harmony and skip and hold hands together. But that's what they always do. So they did it in Cuba, and they did it in Venezuela, and they did it in North Korea and everything. And so there's the siren song that kids are drawn to. It's an emotional ringing of the bell. It's an emotional appeal. Come on over here and things will be great. And your identity group, whatever that is, your sexual identity, your skin pigment, because you've been so horribly oppressed by the current culture, and it oppresses you. So therefore, come on over here to social communism or Marxist beliefs and everything. And then the social justice is going to kick in. Just keep burning things down and destroying cities and fighting a little bit longer, and then you're going to get to that promised land. And well, meanwhile, what's really happening is that a select few are soaking up all the power, money, resources, real estate, you name it, everything. The distribution, supply chains, energy production, means of production, shipping, logistics, whatever, everything. They will own that while everybody's chasing off after that the ever evasive social justice that will never show up. In fact, it was Castro, I think, in Spanish, used to talk all the time about social justice, and he never referred to himself as a communist until he had gained control, and then was like, oh yeah, of course I'm communist. Now most everybody needs to go and live. Well, you can get 2 meals a year and live in abject poverty, and I'm going to live like an opulent king. That's what happens. Same thing happened to Kim Jong-un. So these people take over. The Soviet Union was the same way. There were a few people around Lenin that had, pretty much overnight, they went from failures in life to these big thinkers, and used the hook of creating social justice. And whatever it is, you have some oppressor class, and you're so oppressed. Come on over here to communism, Then once they get there, 100 million people die, and then those people that create the thing, like Lenin or whatever, suddenly overnight they have like billions and trillions of dollars and stuff. It's crazy. It's bad. Terrible stuff. And in the U.S., we saw a little bit of that with Bernie Sanders, who it's my understanding that he tried working once as a carpenter 70 years ago or something, and he's never had a job, but he talks all the time about how oppressed people are. And lo and behold, poof, he's got like 3 mansions and probably has a private jet. And I'm told he drives an Audi R8. And so you get rich by telling other people that if only they follow you and off this path toward communism, that life will be good. But so here's the thing. I got into a tangent about the whole communism thing because it riles me. It gets me really upset. But so if we apply that, and I made myself some notes here. So what if instead of ex-US, what if we look as patriots? And your portfolio shouldn't be only US, but look at small companies in the US, not the big woke-a-doodle corporate ones that are fawning all over corporate equity index, which is the corporate equivalent of a social credit score, but little small companies and startups and everything. I think there's great opportunity there, especially when and if we're actually able to get back to our American roots and get rid of this woke Marxist stuff. And I think the tide's turning. The culture war there's signs that it's maybe won by sane people who don't want to march down that path toward nonsense and mayhem. But so I call it micro versus mega. So there's a lot of small business opportunity. And overwhelmingly, what you're going to find with the big globalist, global bank and investment managers, they don't want to they don't want that. They all want the same like 20 different companies that they themselves, like Disney. What does Disney own? Disney owns like 1,000 other companies, and all of them are being forced to the left. Why say just avoid it entirely? Why don't put your portfolio there? Have some optimism, or at least allow a sliver of your portfolio, some of it or all of it, to be optimistic. So maybe looking at Europe and the United States that are under siege right now, or under massive attack, maybe those are investment opportunities. Oh, and then another thought, like there's these portfolios, these investment managers are loaded up with pharmaceutical, big pharma all over the place. We saw what they did with COVID, and it's heinous. It's horrendous. I'm one of those people that's calling for Nuremberg trials 2.0 because I believe that the amount of greed and manipulation to public detriment was horrible. It's horrifying. I never thought we would live to see a time with that. But is that in your portfolio? It probably is. If you're like most people, you have mutual fund managers who are putting money into those pharmaceutical companies. Why not look at organic agriculture and healthy alternatives like nutrients and those kinds of things? And there are small ways of investing in that stuff and getting in your portfolio. So I refer to the whole thing and the concept as the battle in your portfolio. People think a lot about the battle for your portfolio, and there are these handful of Wall Street firms that would love to lure you over for a virtually identical product at really high fees so that they can get rich off of you instead of that other big Wall Street firm getting rich off of you. Maybe if I can convince you to think a little bit differently, maybe it's the time to start thinking local and look at the community around you. So a little teaser here. I have mentioned in the past that I'm working with a number of different people to create small community-based investment vehicles to invest in businesses near you. It's kind of the opposite of all those riots and burning and destruction that we saw in 2020, 21, 22, and now again in 23, where communities just have these army of people that come in and destroy all the small businesses. like restaurants and car shops and whatever. They destroy everything. It's like wildfire burning down forests. So maybe what we can do is create the opposite, where we the people are creating seed money for investments in local small business. That's the dream. That's the mission. That's the path that I am on. And that is exactly the opposite of what the wokadoodle far left globalists want to see. And just to put a little finer point on it, imagine the time where instead of, and I'm sorry, I'm going to name names. I kind of have to do it in order to illustrate the point. So what if instead of you going through the big Wall Street firm that puts your money in BlackRock, that then BlackRock fund invests another $1 trillion or whatever in like Target and Anheuser-Busch and stuff, which is the parent company of Bud Light, and these companies that are just terrible. They're doing terrible things. What if, and then you really shouldn't expect great appreciation in your investment. But what if some of that money were to go into seed funding your community, and then some of those companies really end up taking off? Not only can you go and see the companies that you're invested in and feel a pride in ownership, but they might actually take off and do great things in the future, in the next round. And then maybe one day, folks like you and I can be the Warren Buffetts of the future, and we'll have lots of money, and people will say, gosh, they made such smart investments, and they invested in the thing that was the opposite of where the mob was heading into. The mob headed into the Green New Deal, and those people were smart enough to invest in their communities and small business and growth and economies in the United States and Europe. Food for thought. I'm Jonathan Broadbent. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of UnWoke.Academy. Stay tuned for the next exciting episode.